When you start doing evil, it's like a slippery slope.
We are treating this case as a homicide, and the investigation is underway.
Cunanan tonight is suspected in 4 murders committed in Minnesota, Illinois, and New Jersey.
Nobody's safe in this, and that's the point we have to get across.
He took a hammer to a guy's head, and then he shot the next guy, stole their vehicle, and came to Chicago, and then tied Miglin's feet and slit his throat with a saw. I mean, that's bizarre.
This was Chicago's most exclusive neighborhood and one of Chicago's most prominent businessmen who was killed in a horrific way.
His throat was slashed, his head covered with a plastic bag, and his body wrapped like a mummy with masking tape.
It was a very unusual killing, even by Chicago standards.
We had a sex-crazed maniac out there killing people.
The 50-year-old Versace was shot twice in the back of the head as he returned from breakfast to his South Miami Beach mansion.
Elton John, who said he loved Versace's flamboyant clothing, was comforted by Diana and a friend when he broke down during the service.
No one really, I think, could believe it actually happened. It's just, you know, he's a very special person.
I mean, he just went up to Versace and shot him in the back of the head. I mean, that's just ruthless.
He could have targeted Versace as a symbolic target. This man represented a great deal of success and fortune and all the things that Cunanan seemed to be enamored with.
Those 2 guys in Minneapolis, that was okay, but he was looking to be someone who had left a legacy. And between Miglin and Gianni Versace, they always talk about Andrew Cunanan.
Everywhere that Andrew Cunanan has gone in the last week, it seems like a body turns up.
Everybody's at risk. Everybody's got to help us put this guy in jail.
And experts say it's nearly impossible to predict what he'll do next.
There's no way of knowing where he's going to be traveling, who he's going to be killing, or how.
This is a person who clearly was adept at not only murder, but at getting away with murder. First and foremost, Andrew Cunanan was a spree killer. That's how he will be remembered in history. What got Andrew Cunanan to the point of being a spree killer is that he was a narcissist. From day one on the social radar in Southern California, he thought he was somebody. He wanted other people to know that he was somebody. And he put himself in situations in Southern California and around the world, primarily in gay social settings, where he tried to be somebody. And he met people along the way who were much richer than him. The victim, Jeffrey Trail, a friend from San Diego. He'd moved to Minneapolis and was lured to this apartment by Cunanan, who was staying here with a former male lover. Cunanan went there in the first place. He told friends in Southern California before he left because of some unfinished business, which in hindsight would seem to be settling a score or 2. Detectives found Cunanan's footprints on the apartment floor, handcuffs that satisfied Cunanan's appetite for rough sex, this claw hammer used to kill Trail. Trail was mostly beaten to death, but then rolled up in a carpet and found in the other guy, Madsen's apartment, of all places. So there were some weird questions for the authorities in Minnesota to start with about one body being in the apartment of another guy. Police say he rolled the body into a rug and that he and Madsen lived with it for 2 days, stuffing bloody rags into this plastic bag, an indication that Cunanan was trying to mop up the scene. 6 days later, he is missing and then turns up shot to death on this lakeshore.
Minneapolis architect David Madsen, who was also murdered, police believe, at the hands of Andrew Cunanan.
He couldn't stop it. He just could not control it. Once he started with the first one, since he'd been practicing this for many years, it just gave him so much joy. And I mean, it's sort of like an animal that just killed the prey. You know, he's, oh my gosh, now I can have a big meal.
He steals a car from one of the victims in Minnesota and drives to Chicago.
He appeared in front of us facing sideways, not facing us, and asked, "Where's the Gold Coast?" And he was referring to a booklet or
guidebook. And I said, well, what do you mean? This is all the Gold Coast. Are you looking for the mansions or the fancy houses? And he said, yeah, the Gold Coast.
This is where, a few days later, he ends up taking up brief residence in the home of Lee Miglin and murdering him.
I think that, you know, walking around here and everything around here should be safe. That's why you pay the money to live here.
It was clearly the high-end section of Chicago. This is where the beautiful people and the rich and famous lived, especially on the Gold Coast. And so for Cunanan to show up here and ask directions to, quote, the Gold Coast, might have seemed out of place, except that he was used to running in those circles. Don't forget, he had a knack for ingratiating himself to primarily rich men.
We are treating this case as a homicide, and the investigation is underway.
Look at the damage Cunanan did to Mr. Miglin. Wrapping his head in tape. Left the nostrils open. I want you to breathe. I want you to feel what I'm doing to you. And he tortured him. I mean, looking at he wrapped his feet in an electrical cord, but he wrapped them 8 times. That's like wrapping a present. We call it that ritual. He staged this whole thing. And I'm sure what he did was some of the early stab wounds were just to get his reaction. I'm pissed, and I'm going to take it out on you. And I'm going to show you what I can do. And he'll start, you know, a couple little stab wounds and stuff like that. He couldn't scream, but he was still alive. That's why he left the nostrils open so he can breathe.
Miglin had been savaged by Cunanan. Even though there was no indication of any sexual violation, he was beaten, some would say tortured. There were some puncture wounds, and then his face was wrapped like a mummy with eye and nose holes. And that's how he was found, under that car.
What struck me is the rage that was used by Cunanan in killing Mr. Miglin.
And then Cunanan made himself right at home after killing Miglin. The body probably still in the house.
30 bruises or contusions of the face. That's just beating someone. I mean, talk about anger. No wonder he spent the night there. He was too tired. He couldn't go anywhere. I mean, he really did. He totally exhausted himself. At the end, he uses the bags of cement. He broke every single rib from Mr. Miglin. Every single rib was broken.
There is said to be evidence the killer spent the night in the couple's 3-story Gold Coast home.
Cunanan, it would seem, makes himself at home. It appeared to be the rich look in Lee Miglin circles at the time. It was kind of classic late 80s, early 90s decor, at least on the Gold Coast of Chicago. Very expensive, the result of a very lucrative business that he and his wife were in.
He was married to cosmetic mogul Marilyn Miglin.
His wife owns a highly successful Oak Street cosmetics and beauty company.
Lee Miglin's wife might well have been more famous than he was, at least to the public. She owned a very prominent cosmetic company, Marilyn Miglin. She was known on television around the world because she was on the Home Shopping Network. Marilyn Miglin was out of town for the weekend and doesn't come home until Sunday. It was almost as if Cunanan had checked into a 5-star hotel. He sleeps in his bed. He makes a meal in the kitchen for himself. Most notably a ham sandwich that he carved, some of it still left behind. He took a bubble bath. He slept in Miglin's bed and then left all of it out for the maid to clean up. At some point, we do know that he somehow gets Miglin's body down to the garage and kind of maneuvers it underneath the car in the garage. And that's where he leaves it. Not a great hiding place. It wasn't really well concealed. They were dealing with a psycho. I mean, that's all that they could figure here, is that this was like a scene out of a movie, and the guy who was behind it is also on the run. Cunanan has a significant head start on law enforcement.
There is so much connections. There's so much purpose that this Cunanan had. He represented something that Cunanan took as being an object of my intense anger, because you can just see it just from what he did to the body.
He was a great entrepreneur of Chicago and a very charitable man and a family. I mean, it's a very, very sad time to see what has taken place.
The circumstances surrounding his death immediately caught the attention not only of Chicago police, but this became what's known in Chicago as a heater case. All the Chicago police pulled out all stops. The mayor's office was intent on seeing a quick solution to this. They wanted the person responsible for this arrested because there was a lot of heat on the police department to solve it.
Biggest heater case that I can remember in a long, long time. I mean, when you see the mayor's wife sends flowers, the governor's wife is at the funeral, they got a call from the cardinal's office. That's, you know, we have heater cases, and then there's red hot mamas, and this was a red hot mama.
So this car that he had stolen in Minnesota and driven to Chicago is parked illegally, getting parking tickets. People are passing it day and night, and the police presumably have also seen it a number of times. And finally, it dawns on some smart officer that maybe this should be checked out. And so that's when they realized that not only was this the killer's car, but it was owned by one of the victims in Minnesota.
He wanted to make sure he got credit. He leaves the Jeep right around the corner. He leaves the Jeep and he takes Miglin's car. Why? Because you're going to follow him. And he's hoping you stupid coppers aren't that so stupid that you will be able to follow me. He wants credit for these. He wants credit. He gets the two in Minneapolis. He gets Miglin.
At that time in law enforcement history, it was much easier to disappear than it is today. And this kid had a way of blending in. He wore wigs, he changed his appearance, he dyed his hair color, he dressed down, he dressed up, he knew his way through a lot of different social and economic circles. And so it wasn't as if he stood out in any one place that he went.
Cunanan's ability to change his looks and adapt to his surroundings make things more difficult.
He was a prolific liar, and he would change his appearance. And these people are very bright, and they're very deceptive. They don't want to be found. They love living in this fantasy world where they can act out all these kinky things and these violent fantasies, and they want to continue to do that because it's rewarding.
He ended up in the New Jersey area of Philadelphia. And unfortunately for a caretaker at a cemetery, he needed another vehicle.
Cunanan had Miglin's car radio on, and he heard in the radio that the police were closing in on the technology they had in the Lexus at the time. So he knew he had to get rid of that car.
Cunanan confronted Mr. Reese up here in the parking lot of the Federal Cemetery, then forced him down the stairs into the basement. This is where Mr. Reese was found shot to death. William Reese was collateral damage for Andrew Cunanan, unfortunately. Cunanan needed a different vehicle. The graveyard worker had it, and he was murdered so he couldn't identify him. How desperate can he be, considering that he's gotten away with this from coast to coast for a month, 3 weeks?
Well, the desperation would come from the fact that he knows the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local law enforcement jurisdictions are after him.
This was an incredibly widespread law enforcement operation at various levels of the criminal justice system. It wasn't just the FBI. It was local police from San Diego to Minnesota to Chicago to New York City to Philadelphia to this small town in New Jersey. And then, of course, most notoriously in South Beach, Miami.
Gianni Versace was one of our most distinguished residents.
I know that his impact was great everywhere, all over the world, fashion and especially Miami Beach.
Tonight, the FBI here in Miami has no idea why Versace allegedly became Cunanan's latest criminal conquest. The 50-year-old Versace was shot twice in the back of the head as he returned from breakfast to his South Miami Beach mansion. Police sources here in South Florida say the murder weapon was a .40 caliber pistol, the same gun that Cunanan is suspected of using during 4 previous killings, 2 former lovers in Minneapolis that kicked off the spree, the murder of Chicago real estate magnate Lee Miglin, whom Cunanan apparently didn't know, and the random murder of a South Jersey cemetery worker. After that killing in May, Cunanan allegedly escaped with the Gravetender's red pickup truck. Today, Miami Beach authorities found that pickup, now with South Carolina plates, in a parking garage a few blocks from the Versace murder scene. A change of clothes outside the truck.
We have a number of articles of evidence that tie Mr. Cunanan to that crime.
The gunshots were fired, and Versace goes to the pavement, and Cunanan runs. And from that point on, all hell breaks loose in South Beach.
Dark shorts, white cap, and wearing a backpack, shot the victim and walked away.
Versace wasn't just a big deal, he was a living icon in the fashion world. And so for him to be murdered in the way he was murdered, where he was murdered, how he was murdered, it really struck a nerve with a lot of people.
It's very scary, but he's basically targeting very rich people, and he knows how to get into their homes right here. We're out there, and if you're out there, we know who you are, so we will find you.
I want to know what his hair looks like now.
I do too.
What does he do? Hide in plain sight.
There was a full court press on in that part of the country, flooded with federal agents and local law enforcement.
We've received over 100 phone calls.
We hope that he's still within the state of Florida. We hope, but that's not a fact right now.
The global media has descended on Miami. They were there not only to cover the murder of Versace, but the upcoming funeral that was being attended by A-list celebrities from across the globe.
Loving, caring, a family atmosphere, and everybody being united.
And so that morning of the Versace funeral, every news crew that had descended on South Beach went to the church. There were hundreds of cameras. I said to my cameraman, we're not going there. Let's go do something else. And that's how I ended up in Cunanan's room. This was a budget hotel, 50 years old. At that time of the year, the middle of the summer, it was moldy smelling, it was dingy. Didn't look like the bedspread had been changed in 25 or 30 years. And so it wasn't a great room to live in. I walked in the front door and I said, I'd like to see the room where Cunanan stayed. The woman at the desk said, well, it's available for rent. The FBI has given us clearance to rent it again. And as I'm getting the key for that room, she said, do you want to rent the other room he stayed in? And I said, I didn't know he stayed in another room. And she said, well, he stayed in another room because he has to move from that first room. And I said, well, yeah, I'd like to see that room too. And so I rented the second room. Unfortunately for the FBI, they were not offered a look at that second room. Hotel employees say he slept during the day and left each night wearing a backpack and sunglasses at 11:15 p.m., that he asked to change rooms 3 times for no apparent reason. This is the last room where hotel records reveal Cunanan stayed under an alias, room 322. In the $35 a night efficiency, we find that Cunanan apparently left behind a stack of gay magazines. It was very clear that Cunanan had been there and that the maid service had not done a very good job of cleaning it after he checked out. Also in this cabinet under the kitchen sink, a bag. In the bag, an empty box from a pair of barber's clippers. According to the receipt from a Miami Beach Walgreens, the clippers and some shampoo and hand cream were paid for with a $100 bill. Employees say Cunanan left the hair clippers behind when he walked out this back door without paying the day before Versace was killed. But he also may have left something else behind. Here in the bathroom medicine cabinet, pieces of what appears to be freshly cut dark hair. If it's Cunanan's, it could provide authorities with DNA samples. The first thing I'm thinking is, how in the world did the FBI miss all this stuff? They have been here, they've cleared the hotel, there's no crime scene tape, there are no officers or agents blocking the front door. They've turned it back to the owners to rent, and I have the keys to the 2 Cunanan rooms, and one of them still has Cunanan possessions left behind. At that point, what I didn't realize is that the FBI had never even searched that room. It wasn't that they searched it and did a bad job. The sloppiness came from the fact that they only searched one room and apparently never bothered to ask, well, did Mr. Cunanan rent a second room? I turned the keys back in and told them that we weren't going to be staying there. We left the motel, and the first thing that I did was call the FBI. This was a major worldwide crime still in progress. I've never believed that we should get in the way of trying to bring somebody to justice. I felt an obligation to call the FBI and tell them what I have on videotape. Hotel employees also called police Friday, and investigators removed what we had found on Friday night. Within about 15 minutes, there was an entire squadron of FBI agents back at the motel. I also got a call from the FBI, and they were demanding my fingerprints. Authorities tonight say they are fingerprinting all those known to have been in room 322, including me, because they still don't have a full set of prints from Cunanan. I ended up not only being in the middle of the crime scene and finding things that federal agents should have found but didn't. So it definitely became a personal story.
The reign of terror brought upon us by Andrew Cunanan is over. Our preliminary investigation has revealed that the thumbprint matches that of Philip Andrew Cunanan.
The caretaker walked in on Cunanan, who was an apparent stowaway on this houseboat. He was a stowaway on a houseboat. Managed to figure out a place that was empty in the harbor and basically just took up residence there, as he did in Miglin's place for a while. When he apparently realized that they were onto him and were closing in on him, he shot himself in the head, and that was the end of it.
Versace was that was the ending. That was the coup de grace. He was waiting to die then, after that.
There was an unprecedented level of pressure put on this man by law enforcement, by media exposure, by the general public looking for him. I think he was a desperate person. I think he was in a situation where it would be very, very difficult for him to move about. At 6:30 a.m. this morning, the body of Andrew Cunanan was removed from the scene. The medical examiner has confirmed that he has died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
And that's exactly what Andrew was. He was a ruthless savage. And thank goodness for us that he just did himself in.
I think he was aware that everybody was looking for him. Everybody had his face. Everybody had his picture.
All across the nation, our citizens can stand down and breathe a sigh of relief.
Cunanan took a lot of these stories and secrets to the grave with him, and so did his victims.
Whenever anybody talks about Lee Minglin now, they talk about Andrew Cunanan. And when they talk about Gianni Versace, they talk about Andrew Cunanan. Andrew Cunanan knew that. That was his legacy.
Cunanan absolutely wanted to be was. Andrew Cunanan wanted to be remembered for something. Unfortunately, he took a number of people down with him in order to achieve that. He certainly is remembered and 25 years later being talked about, but so are the people he killed. And they obviously can't be forgotten and should be remembered more than Cunanan. But it would certainly seem that he, in his narcissistic ways, he wanted people to remember the name Andrew Cunanan. He just wanted to be famous.